Howdy, and welcome to You've Got People Problems, the podcast where we tackle the leadership challenges that no one wants to talk about, but every business faces. I'm your host, Melissa Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group, and this is episode 13. Today's episode is all about one of my favorite topics, expectation setting. Because let's be real, nobody wants to suck at work, and most of the time when things go sideways, it's because expectations weren't clear in the first place. I'm joined by Amanda Barkey, a high-energy entrepreneur, EOS implementer, and, of course, mother of 5. She built one of the top-performing soccer shots franchises in the country and then took it to Hawaii, because if you're going to grow a business, you might as well do it somewhere beautiful. Together, we'll dig into how our own unique lens on the world colors what we see as clear expectations, why soft skills aren't optional if you want to build trust and momentum in your business, and how parenting and managing employees require basically the same skill set. So if you're a business owner, a team lead, or just someone who wants to be a better communicator, this episode is for you. Today, we are joined by Amanda Barkey, and I'm so excited for this discussion because it's all about expectation setting. We're going to be talking about how do we guess less at work and win more as leaders, as owners, and as people in the workplace, because what I've learned is nobody wants to suck at work. We all want to win. And so as we think about turning ambiguity into alignment, that's really the core of the discussion with Amanda today. So I'm going to take my screen shared down and we're just going to have a conversation. And I'm looking forward. There's so much I think that we can learn from this amazing woman. I'd love for you to give the quick overview on what EOS is and why you went down this path.
Sure. Well, just to kick it off, EOS is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a complete proven system. It's a holistic system for your business. We essentially strengthen these 6 key components in your business: vision, people, data, process, issues, and traction. And we do that on a proven process, an EOS proven process, which is a journey I have the privilege to go on with my clients. I'm a teacher, facilitator, and coach of the EOS tools, and it just really helps you to harmonize all the moving parts of your business, run a better business, and live a better life. So my journey with EOS, I'll just roll the tape back. You kind of, touched on it when you were talking about my soccer shots business, but I did not come from an entrepreneurial family. My grandparents were all political refugees. My parents are immigrants. I was born and raised in Canada, where I met and married my husband, who is the visionariest of all visionaries, 10 quick start entrepreneur through and through. So I was bit by the entrepreneurial bug when I met and married him. We've been living an entrepreneurial life together for the last 2 decades. And we moved down to the States to start our soccer shots business. When we started our business, we didn't know what we didn't know. We're gritty entrepreneurs. We're throwing things at the wall, seeing what sticks, but we knew that there was a better and easier way to run a business. We just couldn't quite put our finger on it. And then that's when Traction landed in our laps. So we read the book Traction, and that was our light bulb moment. This was over a decade ago. So we've been using EOS tools in our business for over a decade. And like you said, I jumped in with both feet just over 3 years ago and became a professional EOS implementer. And now, I have the opportunity to do my life's most fulfilling and rewarding work and help other entrepreneurs get a grip on their business so that they can run a better business and live a better life. And, whatever that looks like for them, for me, that's splitting my time between these 2 beautiful places and, just taking advantage of every opportunity that comes across my plate. But it might look different for someone else. And whatever that is, I know because I've used EOS in my business, in my for-profit business, my nonprofit business. We even use EOS tools in our family. Everybody always asks us, how do you do it all? And the answer is EOS. So I get to give people that gift, and it's just a privilege.
Really exciting. We actually also use EOS in our family, in our marriage. It's amazingly efficient. And to hear my daughter run a level 10 meeting, and she's 11 and she's got her clipboard and she's asking questions and bringing out issues is just adorable.
That's great. So I have to say, sometimes my kids are like, Mom, can we just not EOS this? Or you don't need to implement this right now. You don't need to like be an implementer. Just be my mom. And so there's a balance for sure. But it is, yeah, it's really fun, seeing our kids adopting these concepts and tools and running with it. We're in the same boat.
It's a special place. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Ortiz. I've been helping organizations of all different sizes, for-profit, nonprofit, public and private, optimize talent and engagement for the last 18 years. I absolutely love this because people are so quirky and complex, and finding their way to thrive, finding the right seat for them, helping them contribute has been such a wonderful way to spend my career. And when I found EOS, it was such an exciting moment for me because my work fits in the people and data components of those 6 key components that Amanda mentioned. And so we really got off to a great start, and there's so many wonderful people in this community. When I think about what is talent optimization, I really think about people who are engaged in their work and aligned with where the organization's going. Everyone knows what winning looks like in their roles. People know how to communicate effectively and how to recognize each other personally. And most importantly, and this affects people psychologically as much as anything else, is getting the right people in the right seats. Because when the people aren't in the right seats for themselves, they go home with less energy for their family, their physical well-being in their community. They can't show up at work in a way that they want to. They develop imposter syndrome. And oh, by the way, they're not delivering results for their team and their organization and their customers. And so all of these pieces are intricately tied with engagement, and we can measure, do we have the right people in the right seats scientifically? And so it's really fun to go into a team and do a quick audit and say, you've got 2 people that are really struggling to win because they're misplaced, they're miscast. So that's really been the bulk of my career, and I've enjoyed nearly every minute of it, probably. But as we talk about really how do we win more, and how do we set some clear expectations? What I was thinking, I've got a lot of questions for you, Amanda, that your EOS experience will resonate, whether people are running on EOS or not, I think really doesn't matter for this conversation. There are a lot of tools people can grab out of the EOS toolbox and kind of flirt with the concept even before they jump in with both feet. So I'm just looking forward to peppering you with questions. You may have some for me. And I think the thing that resonates most, and I know you'll know this as a facilitator, is that the more specific our stories can be, about clients, about our own experiences, the more they tend to resonate. So thank you in advance for your willingness to share.
Absolutely.
So as you think about building and leading teams in both the business and the nonprofit settings, when did you first realize the power of clear expectations and or the danger of unclear expectations?
Yeah, when did I first realize? I think, you and I were chatting a little bit before this podcast recording, and we were talking about how being a good leader is a lot like being a good parent. And I think that before I was ever even leading teams, or not even before, but the most important team that I lead is my little team of children, right? Like, so I have 5 kids, like you mentioned. And so I have 5 kids in a 7-year age span. And so they're a team, they're a little squad. Sometimes they're teaming up against us. We're outnumbered, but nonetheless, I'm leading them. And in a previous life, before I was an EOS implementer, I was a stay-at-home homeschool mom. And in the session room, when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with entrepreneurial leadership teams, I talk to them a lot about how being a good leader is like being a good parent. You have a handful of rules. You have to repeat yourself often. There's a stat that says you have to say things on average 7 times for someone to hear it the first time. And so, and you have to speak a common language. Like there are all of these things that are so parallel with parenting. So being a good leader is like being a good parent. And I think that that's when sort of I saw that kind of coming together, or coming to life, like when I was a stay-at-home homeschool mom. And I really treated that time like I was, leading an organization or leading a group of of leaders. And so I definitely see the parallels, and I see it show up in the session room all the time. It's funny, like now that I'm in the boardroom and I'm leading executives, they're kind of like I'm kind of like still like a stay-at-home homeschool mom, but I'm momming executives. And so, yeah, it's such a parallel thing.
I heard the other day, I was listening to an audiobook, couldn't tell you which one now,
Uh-huh.
that was saying that the average emotional maturity of most adults is the age of 8. That a lot
Yeah.
of the majority of adults, unless they've done a lot of work, haven't really matured past the age of 8 in their ability to process their own emotions, recognize their own
Mhm.
emotions, and work through them. And it's amazing how if you stop and watch a lot of adults, they might throw temper tantrums differently, but side-eye monkey, like
Yeah, it all comes from the same place. And I work with a lot of really emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware individuals. But at the end of the day, our needs are the same as when we were 8, right? Like we just want to be seen and heard and
appreciated.
recognized and yeah,
Yeah.
acknowledged. And so I can totally see where that would come from. Thankfully, my team members, my leaders that I work with are have done work and are emotionally intelligent. So they're not necessarily like crying and screaming on the floor and throwing a fit, but
Yeah. The
but it
behaviors
comes
look a
from the
little
same
different. They
place.
like race off in the car or
Yeah.
they
It comes from the same place.
it really does. It really does. It's interesting as I was thinking about this discussion and clear expectations, I was hearkening back to a discussion I had with my husband years ago, and he was
Uh-huh.
working on a team with a lot of developers. And he
Yeah.
said there were times when they would figure out that the developers had gone a week in the wrong direction because they got obsessed with fixing something that was a fringe case that no one actually cared about from a client
Mm.
side. And so they had invested all these resources going in a direction that wasn't beneficial to the broader scope of the organization. And I was just thinking about like, what is your role? Where are you supposed to be spending your time? And what is your expectation for someone speaking up if they've gone a certain amount of time in a direction that may or may not be fruitful to the organization? Because I think that happens more than maybe we might want to admit as
Right.
business leaders. How often we find people that have been working on this thing, and you're like, oh, we ditched that idea 3 months ago. I guess you didn't get the memo.
Right. I'm curious if they were running on EOS because I feel like, I mean, my implementer brain just goes to like, if they were doing level 10 meetings, they would be connected and, the circles would
Would have
be
come up.
connected and they would have, yeah, someone would have seen it or said it and they wouldn't have had that issue. But,
Instead, it was this aha moment. Like, are you
right.
kidding me?
Yeah.
So, um, so I actually want to go back to this discussion of parenting parallels because I talk about
Mhm.
this a lot with clients. I really believe that parenting and managing people are really not all that different. And a couple of the
Right.
things I heard you say was around we have to repeat ourselves until they're mocking us.
Hmm.
The what is it? The seventh time might be the first time that they
Yeah.
actually
No, you
hear
have
it.
to, on average, you have to say things 7 times in order for people to hear it the first time. And so, like we teach in EOS to share your company vision. So we create this company vision. We have a tool called the Vision Traction Organizer where we keep the answers to these 8 questions to drive alignment. And then the second part of strengthening that vision component is shared by all. And I think that's something that, at least from my experience, I've seen people kind of like just like kind of put off or throw to the wayside. But it's so important because the leadership team, the executives, they create this company vision and like what good is it if you don't share it with anybody? And so we teach our clients to share that vision top to bottom, side to side with every single employee in the organization. And if you think about it, like if they need to hear things 7 times in order to hear it the first time, they're not, if you're doing a quarterly state of the company address and you're sharing that company vision once a quarter,
Take two
it's going
years.
to take them, yes, years to hear it the first time. And so, yeah, repeating yourself often, like it's so important. Um, and I don't think that leaders really take stock in that enough.
Yeah. And I think as we think about kids, the clarity, the consistency, they really need that from us. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
especially with our more visionary leaders, their consistency can really change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because they get excited about different things very frequently, some of them. And that can be jarring to people. And so that clear vision of where are we headed, the clear core values that we stand
Mm-hmm.
for, when people feel like they have a strong foundation, kids and adults alike, it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for them to lean and engage rather than fret, gossip, and just be distracted generally.
Yep. Yeah. And you touched on core values. That's that common language, right? And so if we create core values, or actually, you don't actually create them, you discover them. You discover and define those core values. They already exist within your organization. If we're talking about, parenting, then they already exist within your family, right? They're the behaviors that are already being exhibited in your family or in your organization, your business, your company. And we want to discover and define them and then live and breathe those core values and use the core values like a common language. I even encourage my clients when I just did a core values exercise yesterday. I had a session with a group and I was saying, look, like for now, keep this like common language, these core values here within the leadership team. We're not quite ready to roll them out yet to the entire organization, but use them in your everyday vernacular with each other. So for instance, something that they didn't even think about was like when they're solving issues as a team in their level 10 meetings every single week, have those core values out and be using them when you're thinking through solving issues, right? Like, does this align with who we say that we are, or align with the behaviors that we're exhibiting, or we're using core values to attract the right people who we want to be surrounded with, and repel people who aren't a right fit. Well, we should be using those same core values to attract opportunities, repel opportunities that aren't a right fit, right? And so we use them as a common language. And I think that's so important to do both in our personal life and our professional life. I have discovered family core values with my partner, with my husband, and we have them in our family and we use them. And I've also done that personally for myself. There's a really great website called Think to Perform. Think and then the number 2 perform. And you can go through a slide deck and discover your personal core values. And so then you can use them in your own personal life to attract people you want to be surrounded with, repel people who aren't a right fit, make decisions, with opportunities or all that kind of stuff. It really helps you to clarify, just and create a common language around who you are and what you want.
Yeah. It's interesting, the core values and the alignment with expectations,
Yeah.
because my expectations really have root in what are our core values. Like for
Mm-hmm.
our family, we've done the same thing. We've discovered our family values, and number one is respect.
Mm-hmm.
Respect for all people, respect for our physical environment, and respect for ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
there are children and actually adult friends that we've really distanced ourselves from because they don't display those core values. And when they are in our space, we're trying to instill those values, but they're so critical to, I mean, I remember when I was first dating my husband, there were friends of his that I was like, no, I can't go there because they weren't meeting my needs and expectations for just basic levels of respect. And
Right.
so it's amazing how those really create the foundations. And then people understand the why behind
Mm-hmm.
your expectations. And it's so much easier for them to get aligned from what I've
Sure.
seen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. Um, something that I've learned is no is a complete sentence, and we were talking earlier about capacity. We're both busy moms and have a lot going on, multiple businesses, nonprofit work, all this stuff. And, if you say yes to everything, you're saying no to something else. And that might be your children, your spouse,
Your
yourself,
health.
Yeah, absolutely. Your self-respect, all of it. And so you have to take that into account. And um, yeah, I think that's really interesting that so early on you were so in tune with that. And that's so important. I mean, we were talking about emotional intelligence, and I think that the more you know yourself and the more emotionally intelligent you are and self-aware, the easier it is to do that, right? And I think it's the easier it is for people to accept that, So I think they can recognize, like you were talking about your why, and when you're really secure in who you are and your why, and your core values, then I think that people they accept that it's coming from a really genuine and strategic place.
Yeah. And the other thing I will say, and I think the reason I knew it so early on was that I've been, I should have been a psychology major undergrad because right out of graduate school, I went to work for Gallup because I was really drawn in by the Gallup Strengths Finder, got to
Mhm.
start doing this talent optimization work both in their San Francisco and Houston offices. And my first week I was dating my husband, I made him take the Strengths Finder because I wanted to understand like who was this person at his core because
Right.
I'm finishing my MBA. I'm have to decide if I'm leaving Texas, where I went to graduate school, to come back to California or go somewhere else. And I'm like, I need to know a lot really quickly.
Sure. I
And one of
love
his
that.
strengths was includer. And so I knew right off the bat, this was someone who had a hard time excluding anyone.
Hmm.
And so all were welcome, which is a
Yeah.
really lovely trait. And I think when we think about clear expectations, I think about what do we expect from other people? Where are they
Mhm.
coming from their own natural aptitudes? And if you
Yeah.
know that, what I find in teams, if we go back to the workplace, is it's so much easier to forgive someone their trespasses when you
Hmm.
realize none of this is coming from a malicious place. It's all coming from their natural talents that if you put
Yeah.
them in the right light, if you flip the switch and say, wow, this is a person who's great at bringing people in, they're great culture builders. They're great people for onboarding. They create this environment that's so warm and welcoming, where mine is much more with, I have command and relator. I'm quicker to step away from people who I am nervous will create problems. Um,
Okay.
and so it's been a really interesting thing to see in the workplace and in the nonprofits we work on together, where we kind of divvy up our roles based on our natural abilities. And that's
Right.
really so much of what you and I are both doing at work is, okay,
Yep.
who are these unique humans you have working for you? Are they in the right place? Are we working at our highest level of capacity? And that's, then we can align clear expectations with what we know people have to give. Because
Yeah.
if we don't do that alignment, we are setting them and us up to fail because there
Yeah.
are some things that you can learn and there are other things that are just natural aptitudes. And so
Yeah.
being really realistic about that boundary, I think is important
Totally.
for us as leaders.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to intent, right? And you can't understand someone's intent unless you understand how they're wired. And so because we're all wired so differently, and I'm such like an assessment junkie, I have a whole notes app on my phone of all of my results from every assessment I've ever taken. And it's like know thyself to lead thyself, right? It's just so important to understand people's intent and where they're coming from and how they're wired. And my husband and I are totally on the same page with this. I love that you're a Gallup's girly. I know that I have done Gallup's assessments. And so
Thanks,
I'll have
Finder.
to check it out and let you know. I know that I'm high harmony. I don't know if that's Gallup
Yeah, it
or
is.
Strengths Finder.
Harmony is
Yeah.
one of the 34 strengths.
Okay, so this is something that I really realized about myself in adulthood because I didn't know, I hadn't taken any of these assessments as a child or even a young adult. And I always thought that I wasn't a competitive person because like team sports is just not my thing. I'm the worst person to play Monopoly with. If you played Monopoly with me, you'd be like, that sucked because I'm just not competitive in those types of scenarios. Like I just want us to all leave as friends, right? So I'm like, you can win. Like that's fine. And I'll like probably even like game it so that you can win. Like I don't want to win. But then what I discovered, and especially like I'm a huge health nut fitness junkie. And so I like to lift heavy things and I go to the gym and I work with a trainer. And I didn't start any of this until I was around turning 40. And so I'm giving my age away, but I started going to the gym and getting really into lifting, and and I became really competitive about it. And what I realized is like I am competitive. It's just me versus me is where I really like um thrive, or I'm really like energized in a competitive way.
Yeah.
And when I took that strengths finder test and I realized that harmony is so high for me, it's like I was like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. So yeah,
I
it's
don't
just
need to beat other
interesting.
people. I need to beat myself, my
Right.
past record, yeah,
So
my
people think
performance.
I'm really competitive, and I'm like, no, actually, it's just in that regard, me versus me. Absolutely. But like with other people, I'm not. And so, yeah, it's just interesting to understand those things. And then, with the people who are most important or in your in your circle, whether it's at home or at work, like really translating that to each other, translating that. It's almost like you're translating your DNA to each other. To the extent that you can do that, you can go further, go faster, because you understand where the person's coming from, how they operate, how they move, what they do, and why they do it.
One of the core values in our business at Activate is meet them where they are for that
Hmm.
exact reason. And I think so
Yeah,
much of what I do, and so many assessments, I use a lot of predictive index because that's the scientific right people, right seats
sure.
measurement, a lot of strengths finder. But if we understand what makes them tick, yes,
Hmm.
it's a little bit of effort to customize the way we interact with them. But like for someone like you, if I'm challenging you to beat your own record as your manager, you're going to get so much further for your team and your clients and your own success
Hmm.
than if I'm just asking you to mitigate any conflict, to
Right,
leverage your harmony. It's like, no, we want to win, but your winning looks different than beating a peer. And so
right.
we've got to understand. I'm actually doing a Strengths Finder workshop for a group of educators next week about specific communication tips with each strength and
Cool.
how do they work with their team members and which one or two team members are they really going to hone in their communication abilities with because they work so closely together. And so, I think about this is really the root of when we think about leaders who think they're being clear when they are not.
Hmm.
And I think you and I probably both see this a lot because we speak from our talent set and
Hmm.
we think we've communicated. I love this
Right.
quote. The biggest fallacy about communication is that it has occurred.
Yeah.
I think I've communicated to you. You're like, I don't know what you want.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I guess, do you have any good examples to share about when leaders come out thinking they're being clear and they're not?
Hmm.
I'll start with one. I was
Sure.
an integrator before I was running my own business. And my visionary that I worked with, he had these big picture ideas. And I could track with him about where he was trying to go, but then I could translate for our team about, okay, here's what he means by this. Here's
Hmm.
what he's trying to accomplish and start breaking it down into steps. Um, and it was amazing how they went, oh, yeah, we weren't
Hmm.
tracking. We didn't get this visionary language. And so being that translator was one of my favorite jobs because I
Yeah.
could see it, but also I
Yep.
could see their faces going, um, what does that mean for us?
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny that you use a visionary as an example. I mean, so I've seen this countless times, but what visionaries will tend to do is they're like almost like a seagull, right? And so they swoop in and then they poop all over everything and then they fly away and everybody's like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? And then the integrator's job really is to explain it all, right? Like make sense of it all and sort of like clean up the poop. And so, yeah, it's the way that I describe an integrator and for people who are listening who don't understand these terms, a visionary and an integrator, they're like a dynamic duo in an organization, right? So think about like Walt Disney and his brother Roy. Like Walt's the person everybody knows, Walt Disney, right? But his brother Roy was his integrator essentially. And Walt was the dreamer, the big ideas guy, and Roy brought all the ideas down to the ground and helped to execute. And so there would be no Disney if there wasn't a Roy, right? And so that's what an integrator does so beautifully. And they really are an ideas filter and this translator of sorts. And so, yeah, I think like when we're talking about expectations, being able to translate what that person actually means, right? Because communication, like that's the number one issue, right, in relationships, whether it's romantic or otherwise. Communication is one of the major issues when relationships break down, lack of. And so I think understanding a person and how they say what they say or what they mean by what they say and being able to translate just helps to up level that communication or increase the communication on a team. And it's funny, like we were talking about assessments and we've done all kinds of assessments and one of my very favorite ones is by an organization called Giant Worldwide, and they're called the Five Voices. So everybody knows like the Myers-Briggs letter combinations, right? My husband's an ENFP, I'm an ISTJ, but what does that really mean when it comes to communication? And Giant Worldwide has taken the letter combinations and broken them down into these five voices. So there's connector, pioneer, guardian, creative, and nurture. And they receive and give communication differently. And so to the extent that you can know what your team's voice, what their individual voices are, you can communicate more effectively. So we've used this tool or this assessment and this tool in our business, and we've also used it in our relationship. My husband and I are partners in everything, business and life, and all across the board. And so it's helped us exponentially understand it, like we said earlier, intent, where the person's coming from, how they're communicating and why. Because the way, I mean, like I said, he's an ENFP, I'm an ISTJ. We're yin and yang. We could not be more different. And so I think our husbands are probably very similar. When you said that yours is an includer, I'm like, oh yeah. My husband's an includer too. I don't think there's ever been a vacation that we've gone on where he hasn't invited other people to join at some stage, either the entire thing or, at some point. But that's him. He's like, everybody, like, get on the bus, everybody come along. And he's such an includer. And so like,
And
I was,
actually, that's pause a minute, Amanda.
yeah.
I'm thinking about all these different assessments out there. And I
Uh-huh.
think the most important tagline I want to place on all of this is
Yeah.
find one you like.
Yes.
One you use and like you use it with fidelity is
Yeah.
so much better than putting your team through assessment fatigue. And, I call it something fun I did on Tuesday. That's the risk. We do these team sessions. And while we might learn something, a lot of people don't have capacity to take in all these different
Totally.
assessments like Amanda and I are probably programmed to do. But whether it's Strengths Finder, Predictive Index, DISC, the Giants one, love languages is one. It's a little
Mhm.
less work oriented, a whole lot more personal relationships. But pick something that helps you get what makes other tick, because I'm hearing the underpinning of this whole conversation, Amanda, is expectations have so much to do with our own unique lens on the world,
Yes.
because we're hearing and seeing things totally differently than our team members based on, like, I have a team member, my project manager, Jennifer, is so detail oriented. I
Hmm.
don't need that many details to function. And so
Hmm.
every meeting I close out with her is, what did I miss? What
Yep.
else do you need? And she's like, well, I need these 5 things. I'm like, great, we can go through those one on one, but it doesn't intuitively come to me to give
Hmm.
that much detail because I don't need it. And
Totally.
so I just wanted to put that disclaimer on all the assessments because,
Yes.
like, there
Yeah.
are so many best assessments for lots of different things, but pick
Yeah.
something and use it. You'll get more
That's a really important
real
point.
quick.
Yeah. And when we're teaching teams EOS, we say that about EOS, like we say, choose and use a system, right? Like anytime I'm presenting EOS in front of a group, and obviously I'm biased. I love EOS and I think it's the best system out there for entrepreneurs with businesses that have 10 to 250 employees, right? Like there's a certain It works for a
Like,
certain group and it works. And that's why, and it's simple. That's why I love it. But yeah, you don't want to be a flavor of the month kind of organization, right? Choose and use a system. And I think that translates also to assessments. Um, but assessments can be a trust builder type of an exercise because they highlight and reveal, right? And they help us to understand each other better. And so I teach my teams to do trust builders with their teams or with within their organization once a quarter on average. And so sometimes that could look like a team bonding event. You're going to go out and do an escape room or a rage room or whatever, or even just go out for a meal, whatever it is. But other times it could be, doing Gallup Strength Finder or Colby. Colby is the one that EOS Worldwide uses. And again, we love it for its simplicity, but just, yeah, bottom of the line, like, choose and use a system. Don't be a flavor of the month kind of leader. But I think know thyself to lead thyself. That's such it rolls through my head almost every day, right? Like I'm on a path to mastery and I'm always seeking to understand myself better, to be a better leader. So it's important.
so if we think about this idea of guessing less so we can win more, I want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about um, like EOS puts a lot of focus on roles and scorecards.
Mhm.
How does that help with setting clear expectations? Why is that such a
Yeah.
game changer when people are taking on an EOS implementation?
Yeah, well, okay, let's just talk about the scorecard for a minute. So a scorecard for your listeners who don't know, it's been called a million things in the history of business, a flash report, dashboard. And we call it a scorecard. And on the scorecard, you have measurables. Other people might know them as KPIs, but really they're just numbers that show you what winning looks like. They give you a pulse on your business. And if you don't set your employees up with this tool, then it's like taking them bowling and turning the lights out, right? They don't know what to hit. They don't know what winning looks like. They don't know if they're winning. So, yeah, making expectations clear is so important. And there are tools that can help you. But if you don't, it's like, it would be like, let's pretend we're not talking about business here. We're talking about sports. I own a soccer company, so it always comes back around to sports. But it would be like if you have a football team and there's no scoreboard and there are no plays, they don't know what to do or, whether they're winning or losing. And so,
Haven't
um,
find the space in which we're playing. What does the
right.
field look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're shooting yourself in the foot if you don't give your people these things because then they're just kind of like feeling around in the dark and it's your if you want to win and like I love how you said at the beginning like we all want to win at work, right? Like we all want to win in our jobs. And so if you're not showing them what winning looks like you're that's a losing battle.
For you and for the team member, right?
Yes.
Everybody's losing, and
Yeah.
that's a
That's
waste of energy
yeah.
and money. And I hate waste. That's one of my like personal
Yeah.
core values. I just hate wasted time, energy, money, talent,
Right.
enthusiasm. All of it is just different levels of waste. And so
Hmm.
I think the reason that I really like defining what are the core roles that you're responsible for, what does your win look like every week on your scorecard? And then
Hmm.
those things evolve over time as the person grows, as the role changes, as we get a better understanding of how the heck to create a measurable for your role, because
Yeah.
some roles are harder than others.
Yeah. Even
Sales is
and
the
even
typically easiest one. And,
yep.
you know,
I was going to say, even as our priorities change, right? So every quarter, we create rocks. Rocks are, it's just a sticky term for goals. But those are our priorities. What do we need to do over the next 90 days to move us towards or advance us toward achieving our vision? And so, as we create new rocks and we have new priorities, our scorecard measurables are going to change. So, yeah, so constantly kind of like, um, just flowing and letting it ebb and flow so that you are doing the things that you need to do, or your people are doing the things that they need to do to win. Understanding what does winning look like and then setting them up for success. It's so crucial. So yeah, I love that. The scorecard is one of my favorite. It's one of the foundational tools that we teach in EOS. And it's a fun tool. It's wet cement. It's always, we're using it like it's a tool. That's what I tell my clients, like, this is a tool, so use it. Don't just, it's not set it and forget it. But it's so valuable and so helpful.
So take me down a level to an experience you've had. So when you see teams transform by tightening up expectations, clarifying what these measurables are for each person, what changes as we tighten up expectations?
Mm-hmm. I think what changes, like I think that from my experience, what I've seen is that EOS is like a flashlight. It shines the light into all the corners of your business. And I feel like the scorecard it's kind of just hitting me right now. That's like the scorecard is the flashlight tool. And a lot of times I'll hear a client say, or they'll have employees that tell them EOS isn't working. And what they're really saying is, I'm not working. And shoot, you're finding out about it because now you're actually tracking this. And earlier we were talking about right people. And when you keep the wrong people, the right people leave. And when you're using this tool to highlight and reveal and kind of shine the flashlight into all the corners of your business, it helps you to realize, and it helps people to realize, like, whether or not maybe they're not in the right seat, or maybe they're not even in the right organization, right? Like, and so yeah, so I feel like it's definitely a tool that helps to highlight and reveal and shine that flashlight into all the corners of your business. And then it, sets people up for success because expectations are clear. So I've seen that happen time and time again.
And how does that affect the organization? I mean, there's some consternation as we're
Mhm.
filtering through who's really committed to stay and commit and contribute, and those
Mhm.
who were kind of retired on active duty. How does that, it
Yeah.
isn't smooth sailing usually.
No,
Usually
it's
there's
not smooth
choppy
sailing. It's
waters.
uncomfortable. And it's not, I mean, that's something we teach is like that's one of the EOS healthy rules is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? And so you're going to go through, what was that big fancy word you use? Consternation?
My daughter tells me words matter in our family. I'm like, yes, I
That's
love
great.
words.
You'll definitely experience some growing pains, right? But it's necessary. And I've seen people, organizations come around at full circle and be on the other side of it. And man, it's a beautiful thing when they put in the work to really iron all that out. And you get all the right people in the right seats in your organization. It's like, that's when the magic happens. That's when things really come together.
And I think as you were talking about shining the light on people who kind of have retired on active duty, they're doing just
Mhm.
enough to get by. In recent years, they started calling it quiet quitting.
Hmm.
They aren't benefiting. That individual person is not benefiting from their quiet quitting. They're literally in this stasis mode where they're not growing, they're
It's
not
dull.
challenged,
Yeah.
they're collecting a paycheck in return for something they know is not valuable contribution.
Right.
So as we do that, it helps them break out of this period of their life where they've stagnated and not
Hmm.
in to anyone's benefit. And so even though we do have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, it is for the greater good of the organization of all of our people. And God, when what one of the things, the biggest benefits I see is the people who are high talent, high performers,
Hmm.
they know who around them isn't pulling their weight. And as we
Hmm.
start to shine a light on that, they go, thank you. You talked about it earlier, and I'm going to say it again because I know how many times it takes for it to sink in. But when we let low performers thrive, our high performers leave.
Yeah.
When we let the wrong people stay, the right people leave. And then all of a sudden, we've lost our best performers. We have mediocre performers. And sometimes that's what kills a business.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
so it's a really scary thing. And especially just the heartache of losing someone good.
Yeah.
That's an important part. And so that clarity of expectations can be such a gift
Mm-hmm.
at every level.
Yeah, absolutely. We use a tool called Quarterly Conversations. And this is something that I teach my clients, and it's essentially uh, a way for you to connect with your direct report, heart to heart, or shoulder to shoulder if you're going for a walk. But really getting to um, getting to a point where you're having a really honest conversation about the 555. We call it the 555. It's your five core values, your five rocks, and your five roles. And we use five just because 3 to 7 is the rule of thumb. So meet in the middle, the number's five. And so having that conversation with your direct report, and it's not a performance review, it's just a conversation. And we were talking earlier about tools that you can use to improve communication. And one thing that I teach leaders when we're talking about this conversation is echoing. And so saying to someone that you're talking to, this is what I heard you say. Now tell me what you heard me say, right? Echoing back and forth. And also the 80-20 rule, letting the person that you're having this quarterly conversation with talk 80% of the time and you talk 20%. That's really hard for some people to do, but it's so important. People just want to be seen and heard and for expectations to be clear. And so providing a space for that and using tools to help enhance that really goes a long way.
I'll add on to that the value of having someone state back to you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what do you what do you need to do? What did you hear me say?
Mm-hmm.
What are you aiming for? One of the things I teach managers is this 3-part rule about ending every interaction with, okay, do you know what you need to do? Do you have what you need in terms of resources?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to throw in, are you the right person to be doing this? Because sometimes it'll be, actually, Amanda would be really good if she would help me with the outline. I could have a 10%, 10x better presentation because she's the
Mm-hmm.
subject matter expert. Do I have the freedom to work with her on this or to, pull that out of her brain? It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing how sometimes the answer is, no, I'm not the right person. And I have to say, I'm sorry. I really need you to do this. But if I know what's expected, I have what I need, so many of the barriers, and if I'm the right person, it's so valuable to get through that. And so I love adding echoing back to that. Okay,
Yeah,
what did you say? What did you hear me say? Just that slowing down, because I think all of us are moving so fast often. We're worried about the next meeting we need to get to and the thing we need to get accomplished and all of our to-do lists.
right.
But the age-old rule of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like to look them in
Absolutely.
the eye, like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
What's going on? How can I help? What do you want to
Slow
learn
down.
next?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard for a
Slow
lot of
down.
us.
Absolutely. Yeah, but so important, so crucial. That's really powerful.
So, okay, so we are quickly running out of time. I'm going to pull up the tips and tricks I've pulled out of our discussion that I think are really
Sure.
valuable takeaways for people who are listening. And you can tell me what I missed, what you want to clarify or add on. So, I've got 3 that I've captured. So, one is it takes 7 times of hearing something, often to hear it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I always explain that is they don't get it till they're mocking you. Until someone's making a joke about it, then you know they've really got it in their
Mm-hmm.
brains and they've processed it. So
Love that.
that was one of them. Another one was clearer expectations often shine a light on people who are retired on active duty, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Third was just echoing. Here's what I heard you say. What did you hear me say? These are some really specific things I think we can put in our brains and integrate into the way we interact, both at work and outside of work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about the work that I do is it translates across every area in my life. Like I've seen it, you know, professionally, personally work. And so, yeah, I would just encourage your listeners to use these tools, not only in business, but in your personal life too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a special place. So, Amanda, thank you for joining us.
Of
Would you
course.
like to share how people can contact you? What, how would you like to be
Yeah.
reached out to if somebody's interested in EOS or?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whether you're interested in EOS or otherwise, you can reach out to me at amanda.barkey@eosworldwide.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can call me. My phone number is everywhere. It's 305-283-6244. So just give me a call, text, email, whatever. Just reach out. I love to talk to people. And so I'd love to connect with any of your listeners for any reason.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I can be contacted by email. My email's up on the screen. It's
Great.
mortiz@activatehcg.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think Amanda and I are pretty easy to find. But again, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, we'd love to discuss these topics. And you'll see our book on parenting and managing people coming out in the someday future because
Absolutely.
it's a critical topic because there's so much translation that happens between those things. So thank you so much for talking about this topic of expectations and for the work that you do, because it's really important and valuable for the teams that you're impacting.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate you as well.
You bet. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.